Imagine this. It's the beginning of the 20th century, the time when cars are actively produced, but you and your brother make bicycles. They are no longer interesting to anyone, and you don't like them either. You and your brother want to be closer to cars, so you start making parts and engines for big companies like Ford. But that's not enough for you. You want more. At your own risk, you begin to create cars, the main advantage of which is reliability. Already in the first year of operation, the success was enormous, so much so that you created thousands of cars a year, but there were many more orders. You and your brother are doing just fine, but at one point, your bad habit and lightness killed you. The car manufacturing company did not stop and continued to develop actively. Your cars are known all over the world. This is the story of two brothers, John and Horace, who have been a single entity all their lives and created the legendary Dodge Car Company. John Dodge was born in 1864 in Niles, Michigan. 2 years later, he had a brother, Horace. There were 3 more children in the family. The father of the Dodge brothers owned a foundry and machine shops, so the brothers were very fond of engineering and mechanics. In 1886, the Dodge family moved to Detroit, where John and Horace took jobs in a boiler factory. They later started working together as typists for the Dominion Typograph Company in Canada. Dominion Typography was ill-suited to make bicycles and soon went bankrupt. The Dodges saw their employer's failure as an opportunity to start their own business. The brothers had their own peculiarity. John loved to communicate with people and sell, and Horace had a talent for mechanics. He had golden hands. In 1897, Horace invented and patented ball bearings. They were stain-resistant, so they didn't clog or stop working. That same year, the Dodge brothers teamed up with Frederick Evans to start producing Evans & Dodge bicycles. Frederick was an investor for them, and the bikes were built with unique ball bearings. It seemed like a great business idea, but it failed because the brothers didn't like building bikes. 4 years after the creation of the company, in 1901, they sold their share for $3,700. After the sale, they returned to Detroit and used the money to set up their own machine shops, but quickly switched their interest to automotive parts as the new industry grew rapidly. Even as parts manufacturers, they had a reputation for being the best. They signed huge contracts with the Olds Motor Vehicle Company and Ford Motor Company to build engines, transmissions, and axle frames. The Dodge brothers soon became major stockholders of the Ford Motor Company. Henry Ford gave them stock when he couldn't pay in cash, and they became a 10% owner of the company. He then contracted them to build the Model T because Ford couldn't keep up with the demand, and they even redesigned some parts of the car. In their workshop, they created a car that was to become the basis of Ford's successful business. After that, John Dodge became vice president of Ford. But the brothers were not happy with their collaboration with Henry Ford. Because of this, they often began to sit in bars drunk until they lost their memory. They were drunkards, prone to belligerence when intoxicated, and they had a reputation for violent behavior in the city. In 1911, John and his friend beat up a lawyer in a bar. The information quickly got into the media and ruined the reputation of one of the Dodges. However, the Dodge brothers soon decided to break off relations with Ford and start their own company. They used some of the profits from Ford's stock to start the Dodge Brothers Automobile Company in 1913. They expanded their factory and built the first test track on site. No other automaker had such a testing lab. Dodge released its first car in 1914, the Dodge Model 30, which was designed to compete with Ford's Model T with a whopping 35 horsepower. It was a budget-friendly car that made the brothers a huge success. The car, produced at the Hamtramck plant on November 10, 1914, represented a significant improvement over Ford's cars. The Dodge brothers' car had an automatic starter that rarely depended on cranking, making it easier for women to drive. It also had a manually operated fuel pump that allowed the Dodge car to climb a steep hill without forcing the driver to shift into reverse and reverse up the hill, as some Ford Model T drivers had to do. Dodge dealers quickly began popping up all over the country. The first was Cumberland Motors in Nashville, Tennessee, which operated until the late 1960s. The Dodge brothers actually received 22,000 applications from new Dodge dealers before they even finished Model 30 production. thanks in large part to their reputation in the auto parts industry and the work they've done with Ford. Dodge launched the Roadster in 1915, and the following year introduced hardtop winter cars with side windows as a center door sedan. Dodge launched an advertising campaign with the slogan, "It speaks for itself," and the company invented the word reliability, which was soon added to the dictionary. For 3 years, the Dodge Brothers Company has been so successful and has a good reputation that it even cooperated with the government. In 1916, Dodge sold 150 vehicles to the U.S. Army and developed a truck that would be used as a military ambulance during the following year. Dodge cars and trucks were also used extensively by U.S. forces during World War I. By the end of the war, the Dodge Brothers plant was the fourth largest American automobile manufacturer in production. In the summer of 1919, their factory was producing 500 cars every day and still lagged behind the volume of orders received from dealers. At that time, more than 100,000 Dodge cars had already been sold. In 1920, John and Horace Dodge left for an automobile exhibition. They had bright prospects. However, a week after this, Horace got very ill. The doctor diagnosed him with the flu, which killed more than 500,000 Americans from 1918 to 1919. But there were rumors that he was actually the victim of a bad batch of illegal liquor. John Dodge was with his brother at this time. They were inseparable from childhood. Because of this, he also fell ill. Since John had tuberculosis for more than 20 years, his body could not beat the flu, and he died 10 days later at the age of 55. Horace Dodge continued to fight his illness and soon recovered. He was a broken man without his older brother and partner. Horace started drinking alcohol every day and died in December 1920 from cirrhosis of the liver. He was 52 years old. At the time of their deaths, the Dodge was the second best-selling car in the country, with production exceeding 81,000 units for that year. Their widows, Anna and Matilda, began to manage the company. But women did not understand anything in business at that time, and even more so in cars. Soon, in 1925, the widows of Horace and John Dodge sold their car business to Dillon Read's investment bankers for $146 million, who sold Dodge to Chrysler 3 years later. The Dodge Corporation had huge production facilities. This allowed Chrysler to enter the top 3 auto giants in Detroit, along with Ford and General Motors. There were times when Chrysler even overtook Ford in terms of production. At first, Dodge was in second place in the corporation and was second only to Chrysler in prestige. During the years of the Great Depression throughout the 1930s, many automakers had to look for new and innovative ways to advance production. Dodge had radically updated its cars. They started building stainless bodies, automatic spark control, a new silent transmission, and more. These changes allowed the company to preserve in difficult times. In 1935, Dodge celebrated its 3 millionth car and its 25th anniversary in 1939. At the time, the company was building over 300,000 vehicles a year. When World War II reached the U.S. in 1941, Dodge, along with every other domestic automaker, ceased production of passenger cars to develop vehicles that could be used in the war effort. Dodge production switched to WC light trucks, radar sets, Sperry gyro compasses, and B-29 engines. This equipment was sent to the Soviet Union, but already in 1945, Dodge released its first cars of the post-war era, the Dodge Custom 4-door sedan and the Dodge D24 Custom Coupe Cabriolet. The company also produced its 5 millionth car in 1946. By the end of that decade, the brand had phased out all pre-war style Dodges and released new models such as the 1948 Power Wagon and the single-seat Wayfarer Roadster in 1949. Throughout the 1950s, Dodge redesigned the look of its line models to match the more flamboyant looks and styling desired by the era's consumers. Major events that Dodge experienced during this decade included the introduction of the Diplomat in 1950, the first all-metal station wagon. In 1955, the Dodge La Femme was released with the first-ever highway hi-fi in-car entertainment system. In 1964, on its 50th anniversary, the company released the Dodge Charger. Also in those days, Dodge cars began to be actively used in racing. In 1974, during one of the races, Richard Petty won a victory by driving a Dodge Charger. This is the same muscle car that Vin Diesel drove in The Fast and the Furious. Therefore, the company begins to produce not only family cars, but also sports cars. In the early 70s of the last century, the fuel crisis that everyone remembers began. With its advent, the era of muscle cars ended, and with it, the prosperity of the American automotive industry. Chrysler was in a particularly difficult position. It was unable to offer the consumer a compact, subcompact car. The corporation was forced to sell the Japanese model Mitsubishi Lancer branded Dodge Colt. Subsequently, this led to a dependence on the so-called captive import. Cars sold under the Dodge brand include the Dodge Ram 50 pickup truck, Mitsubishi Pajero, Mitsubishi Starion, and Mitsubishi Galant. All these cars were made by Mitsubishi but sold under the Dodge name. In the early 1980s, the Chrysler Corporation was on the verge of bankruptcy, but the situation was savaged by a large state loan. The US government was worried about the fate of Dodge, as it was the largest car manufacturer in the US. In those days, manufacturers focused on the efficiency of cars, but Dodge continues to emphasize performance. They released several new cars, including a convertible, but they have not received much success. In 1992, Dodge released a new racing car in the Viper series with a 450 horsepower engine, which was later improved to a 510 horsepower. The new millennium has brought a whole new list of innovations and upgrades for Dodge, especially starting with 2010. That same year, Dodge released a special version of the Mopar 10 Challenger, as well as 6 all-new or heavily redesigned vehicles. By the time the company turned 100 in 2014, Dodge had achieved the notable status of America's fastest-growing automaker. Although it has been over 100 years since John and Horace Dodge first embarked on their mission to create cars in their own image, their legacy continues to grow and flourish. Every year, there are new cars that are constantly changing. But one thing in this company remains unchanged: its reliability.